With Princess Vivi safely back in Arabasta and a new crewmate, Nico Robin, on board, the Straw Hats' next adventure begins when a giant ship suddenly falls from the sky. At this point, the log pose starts to point straight up and Robin explains that the log is captured by an island with a stronger magnetic field, a sky island. While exploring the sinking ruins of the ship, they come across an old map of a land named Skypiea. Through a skull and some books, they figure out that the ship is the St. Brice, which left the Kingdom of Breeze in South Blue 208 years ago. This piques the interest of the crew, and they decide to salvage the sunken ship. When they try to salvage the sunken ship for more information, they come across a group of pirates led by Masira, who claims that he has control over the territory and all ships that sank there belong to him. Masira and his crew begin the salvage operation and are in the process of raising the ship when they run into a snag. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, who are underwater searching the wreck, start beating up Masira's crew. Masira goes down to handle things and confront them when a giant sea turtle comes along and swallows the ship, though Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Masira all escape. However, out of nowhere, the sky turns dark and three humongous shadows appear. Out of fear, the pirates run away as quickly as possible. Luckily, Robin manages to take an eternal pose to the nearby island of Jaya from Masira's ship and goes there to find more information. Roshio the Executioner, a pirate with a belly 48 million bounty, wins a poker game against Hyena Bellamy, a pirate with a bounty of belly 55 million. Bellamy accuses Roshio of cheating and gets Sarquis to back him up. When Roshio disagrees, Bellamy stabs his hand with a knife and shoots him in the head. In the port town of Mock Town, the group of Luffy, Zoro, and Nami encounter several odd people, all of whom are members of the Blackbeard Pirates, until they end up at a hotel. There, they encounter Sarquis of the Bellamy Pirates, who insults the group and even gives them some money to buy better clothes. They later end up in a bar where they encounter Blackbeard himself, though they do not know who he is. After he leaves, Bellamy himself barges in looking for Luffy, claiming that he wants to test him to see if he is worthy of joining his new age of pirates. However, when Nami asks the bartender for information about Sky Island, Bellamy rejects this notion immediately, and the entire bar starts ridiculing the three. He explains that so many people are focused on searching for dream treasures like the City of Gold and the One Piece that they ignore all of the real treasures around them. Bellamy attacks Luffy and Zoro while the other people in the bar start throwing things at them. But despite Nami's urging, they refuse to fight back, paralleling how Shanks and his crew did not fight back against Higuma when he and his crew attacked them in Mikino's bar. They are laughed out of the bar, where they once again encounter Blackbeard, who states that they did the right thing not fighting back those who are not worth the effort of fighting against and encourages Luffy on his dreams. The three go back to the ship to discover that Robin has managed to find some relevant information on the other side of the island. There is a man who might know how to reach Sky Island, Mont Blanc Cricket. On the way there, they encounter Shuju, an orangutan pirate who has a belly 36 million bounty and is also Masira's brother, but they manage to escape. They arrive at his house to find that it is empty, but they found a book, the story of Mont Blanc Noland, aka Liar Noland. Sanji explains that it is a fairy tale from North Blue. The story of Noland goes that while exploring the Grand Line hundreds of years ago, Noland came across a city of gold. He returned to his home and informed the king, who accompanied him on the next journey to the island. However, when they reached the island, the city of gold was gone. Angered, the king sentenced him to death for lying. To his last breath, Noland claimed that he was telling the truth, and proclaimed that the city of gold must have sunk underwater. However, no one would believe him, and he was executed. As it turned out, Cricket is a descendant of Noland and was trying to prove whether it exists or not by diving into the ocean every day to search for evidence, to the point of injuring himself. Chopper treated him and they met up with Masira and Shuju again, who helped Cricket out on his quest under the name Suriyama Alliance. Cricket explained that if the Sky Island existed, the only way to reach it would be through Knock Upstream, a humongous geyser in the ocean. In order to reach it, Cricket has the Straw Hats go into the forest to search for a south bird, a bird whose head always points south. During this time, the Suriyama Alliance upgraded the Going Merry in order to withstand Knock Upstream. Meanwhile, hearing that Cricket managed to uncover some gold, Bellamy and his crew decided to steal it from him, severely injuring him and the others in the process using his Bane no Mai, which can turn his limbs into springs. When the crew returned with the Southbird in tow, Luffy decided to get the gold back. In Mocktown, new bounties were mailed in, and to everyone's surprise, they found out that Luffy's bounty was belly 100 million while Zoro's was belly 60 million in comparison. Bellamy's was only belly 55 million. Bellamy scoffed at this, claiming that they were fakes that were made to scare him. This calmed everyone down until Luffy screamed for Bellamy to come out. Luffy demanded that Bellamy give the gold back, but he refused. Bellamy attacked him with his devil fruit powers, but Luffy still does not fight back. Angered, he decides to finish him off with his ultimate attack, Spring Hopper, while still mocking him for following dreams. At this point, Luffy finally becomes fed up with Bellamy's words and took him down with a single punch. The terrified pirates realized that Luffy's wanted posters were actually real and ran away in fear. Luffy then took the gold and went back to Cricket's house while the remainder of the Bellamy pirates were too afraid to fight back. Upon hearing about his bounty, Blackbeard and his crew decided to strike. Somewhere else, on an island in the Grand Line, the status of Buggy and his crew was shown, as Ace boarded his ship and offered to help him search for Luffy. Meanwhile, Shanks tried to contact Whitebeard only to have his letter torn up, with Whitebeard telling the messenger, Rockstar, to have Shanks meet him in person. Rockstar reported back, to which Shanks told the crew to prepare for a meeting with Whitebeard. At Mary Geoise, a meeting of the Marines and the 7 warlords of the sea was being held to discuss what should be done about replacing the warlord Crocodile. Much to then Fleet Admiral Sengoku's surprise, 2 of the 7 warlords, Bartholomew Kuma and Don Quixote do Flamingo, were in attendance when Hawkeye Mihawk arrived. Just when the actual meeting was about to begin, Lafitte of the Blackbeard Pirates appeared to recommend his captain as Crocodile's replacement. The people there stated that nobody has ever heard about him, but Lafitte stated that they were presently working on a plan to change that. When Luffy returned and gave Cricket his gold back, he and the crew set off for Knockup Stream, led by the Sariyama Alliance and the South Bird. When they reached the right area, they were confronted by the Blackbeard Pirates, who revealed the Straw Hat Pirates' new bounties to them. However, before a battle ensued, the Straw Hats were caught in Knockup Stream and were sent flying into the White Sea, leaving the Blackbeard Pirates' raft to be destroyed and to fall to the sea below. Skypiea. Having ridden the Knockup Stream, the Straw Hats find themselves in a sea of clouds which, as they find out, has the same effect as normal water on a devil fruit user, but before they have a chance to relax, they are quickly attacked by a strange man in a mask who is riding on the clouds. The crew are unable to defend themselves, but they are thankfully saved by an old knight named Gan Fall, who rides on a bird with devil fruit powers named Pierre. He points out to them that the reason that they could not fight back against the gorilla was due to the thin air, though immediately afterwards the crew says that they are starting to get used to it. Gan Fall gives them a whistle to summon him in case they run into more trouble, and the crew continues on. They reach Heaven's Gate, the entrance to Skypiea, where they are told to pay 1 billion extols per person as the entrance fee, but the crew have no idea what extol is. In response, the gatekeeper, Amazon, basically tells them she does not care what they do but does not warn them that if they pass without paying, they will be marked as criminals, and the crew goes into Skypiea. The ship reaches the shore of Angel Island, the main part of Skypiea, where they meet a girl named Canis and her father, Pagaya. They let the crew come into their house so they can introduce them to Skypiean society, but Nami decides to stay at the ocean and try out Pagaya's waver, a device similar to a jet ski that can move under its own power without any wind. While Canis explains the use of dials, Nami ends up riding the waver to a nearby island with a huge forest. When Sanji points out that Nami is gone, Canis and Pagaya explain that the nearby island is known as Upper Yard. Upper Yard is a forbidden sacred ground where God Enel and his priests reside, and no one must ever set foot on it. This immediately sparks Luffy's interest, and he commands that they head out to rescue Nami, but he makes it obvious that he simply wants to go to Upper Yard to explore and have an adventure. At Upper Yard, Nami witnesses Enel's priests chasing a man who was searching for treasure on the island. However, before the priests can finish him off, Enel decides to act on his own, and in a show of power, a massive beam of energy fires from the sky and disintegrates the treasure hunter. Gidatsu of the priests explains to the others that their time limit was up. Another group of criminals has just appeared, a group of 7. From this, Nami realizes that they are talking about them and rushes back to Angel Island. Meanwhile, on Angel Island's beach, the crew encounters the White Berets, led by Chief McKinley, who act as Skypiea's lowest level of law enforcement. The White Berets explain that the Straw Hat Pirates are criminals, and that the punishment for illegally entering is to pay 10 times the entrance fee, or 10 billion extols per person. Here, it is explained that there are 10,000 extols per belly, making the fee belly 1 million. The crew decides to wait for Nami to come back, but even doing minor things like snoring ends up raising the crime level. Nami eventually returns, but when she finds out about the fee, she rams the waiver into McKinley while yelling that it is too high. In response, the White Berets launch an attack, only to be easily defeated by Luffy. This ends up raising them to Class 2 criminals that are to be dealt with by the priests. The crew starts packing up to leave with Nami, Chopper, Robin, and Zoro at the ship while Luffy, Sanji, and Usopp get food and supplies from Pagaya's home. Suddenly, the ship is grabbed by a Super Express speed shrimp that carries them to Upper Yard. Luffy, Sanji, and Usopp, led by Kanas, go to Lovely Street in order to get a boat to rescue them. Kanas lends them her dial-powered ship, the Karasumaru, but before they leave, Luffy notes that she was shaking the entire time she was leading them. Kanas reveals that she was the one who called the shrimp to take the ship and is intentionally leading them to Upper Yard. It is God Enel's will that they lead criminals to that island, and not following it will result in death. Upon hearing Kanas say this, all of the townspeople run away. True to her word, Enel strikes and fires a massive beam of energy at her from the sky, but she is saved by the knight, Ganfall. He explains that since both she and her father will be considered criminals, he will take them back to his house, which is out of Enel's range. Despite this show of Enel's power, the 3 pirates continue on to Upper Yard unhindered. Meanwhile, Nami, Zoro, Robin, and Chopper find themselves in the ship on top of a large sacrificial altar surrounded by shark-infested clouds. Zoro, Robin, and Nami decide to explore the Upper Yard for different reasons. Using a vine, the crew swings over to land, except Chopper, who stays to guard the ship. Luffy's group enters Upper Yard, and they travel through the Milky Road, a cloud river, avoiding several dangerous traps. Eventually, they reach a hand stature with the river branching off into 4 paths going through each finger, each labeled with a different ordeal: ordeal of swamp, ordeal of iron, ordeal of string, and ordeal of balls. Luffy chooses the ordeal of balls, thinking that it sounds fun. And after a drop, they find themselves in an area of the forest with several cloud balls floating around. 10 each of the surprise balls contains a different object. Some contain snakes, other explosives, other harmless flowers, etc. At this point, the priest Satori appears and attacks them, but they find that he is somehow able to read their minds using an ability called mantra. After a long and difficult battle, they manage to get past his mantra by turning his own attacks against him. Sanji debuts a new move called Konkasi, which is enough to knock Satori out. At Ganfall's house, he explains to Kanas and Pagaya how there is a constant war between the guerrillas, known as Shandia, and the Skypieans over control of Upper Yard, and as the previous god more accurate, the ruler of Skypiea, he tried to find peace. However, once Enel took over, all notions of peace were abandoned. Meanwhile, the priest Shura arrives at the sacrificial altar to find that Chopper is the only one left to kill. In response, Chopper uses the whistle to call Ganfall. Shura heavily damages the ship with his fire-based attacks, but before he can finish off Chopper, Ganfall attacks. They seem to be evenly matched until Shura starts his ordeal of string, which activates several dials that shoot out nearly invisible string to tangle up the foe. 14 Ganfall, Pierre, and Chopper end up falling into the clouds. After looking around a bit, Zoro's group reaches a startling conclusion. Upper Yard is part of Jaya. Specifically, it is the location of the Gold City mentioned in Lyre Nolan's tale. In other words, the Gold City did not sink into the water, it was launched into the sky by the knock-up stream. At the same time, Chopper wakes up to find that he, along with Ganfall and Pierre, are safe on the sacrificial altar. As it turns out, they were saved by a flock of giant south birds. At the tribe of the Shandia, a girl named Isa, who also has the ability to use mantra, reveals that both Satori and Ganfall were defeated. Taking this as an opportunity, Wiper, leader of the Shandia warriors and the one who attacked the Straw Hats earlier, decides to invade Upper Yard. He and the tribe's warriors battle with the remaining priests. When Wiper comes across Luffy's group, he warns them to leave the island and not to interfere. The battle between the Shandia and the priests seems to be even, until one of their strongest warriors, Kamakiri, is defeated while trying to rescue Isa's cousin, Rocky. Once Wiper hears about this, he orders a retreat. Nami, Zoro, and Robin return to the altar, and at the same time Luffy's group finally arrives. It's getting dark, so the crew decides to camp out in the forest. If they were found, they would have more room to fight, and they would not destroy the Going Merry more. The Straw Hats pool all of their information together, and surmise that the Upper Yard is actually the lost city of gold. With this information, they decide to steal from the Gold City before they go back to the Blue Sea. In order to come up with a plan, Nami puts the maps of Jaya and Skypiea together to form the image of a skull. Nolan's logbook stated that the City of Gold was in the skull's right eye, which they realize is referring to Jaya's geography. To celebrate, Luffy starts a huge bonfire, much to Nami's annoyance, since it will just get the priest's attention. Along with a pack of wolves, the Straw Hats dance around the fire as an Eve of Gold festival. At this point, Ganfall regains consciousness. He explains to Robin that objects from the Blue Sea sent to the White Sea by Knock Upstream are considered very valuable treasure. The most valuable was the dirt and soil called Varth, which can rear plant life much better than Cloud can, causing a religious reverence for it by the Skypeans. When Upper Yard was launched into the sky hundreds of years ago, it was considered a holy land, which led to a war with the native Shandia over control of the land. After the party ends, Usopp goes to the river to urinate when he sees a strange figure fixing the Going Merry, but fog prevents him from seeing it clearly. In the morning, they find that all of the damage caused by Shura has been fixed and the upgrades done by the Suriyama Alliance have been removed. Not only is it odd that someone else would help them in the enemy's territory, but also that the person would know what the ship originally looked like. However, they decide not to focus too much on it, and once they get the ship off of the altar, Nami forms a plan. While Luffy, Zoro, Chopper, and Robin go to the city, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji will take the Going Merry and Ganfall out of Upper Yard. Meanwhile, Wiper punishes Rocky because a bag of dirt, given to her by Isa, was what got her caught in the first place. Kamakiri stops him, stating that he can still fight. Thus, Wiper decides to start one final offensive, telling his soldiers that they are retaking their home. At Upper Yard, Enel reveals himself and meets with the priests, telling them that they will be free to use their ordeals on all of the island. As the Shandia and the Straw Hats both head into the island, the survival game begins. Luffy's group set off for the Gold City, only to encounter a gigantic python. Due to its attack, the group gets separated, with only Robin still on the right path. On the Going Merry, Ganfall recounts the history of his country, the origins of the Shandians and the rift between their people. He tells them that 6 years ago, Enel appeared out of nowhere leading a powerful army and gained control over Upper Yard. Ganfall then explains how dials can be used as weapons, demonstrating with his impact dial, which can absorb and reflect impact attacks. Meanwhile, the Shandia come across Shura and are immediately caught in his ordeal of string. However, Wiper managed to avoid it and defeats Shura using a reject dial, a thought-to-be extinct version of the impact dial that multiplies the attack power, but also damages the user. As the warriors split up and continue on, Enel releases his 50 divine soldiers, led by Yama, to fight them. At this point, Enel predicts that within a few hours there will only be 5 participants in the survival game, including himself, left. Zoro ends up facing one of the Shandia warriors, Bram, but defeats him using his Sanjiroku Pound Ho. At the same time, Luffy encounters Wiper once again. Though they seem to be evenly matched, Luffy is eaten by the giant python, interrupting the battle. Chopper ends up encountering Priest Gadatsu, who, after being defeated by the reindeer, gets caught in his own ordeal of swamp and falls to the Blue Sea. Robin encounters Yama at some ancient ruins and defeats him. On the Going Merry, Enel appears to tell Ganfall that he has no use for the island anymore and is about to leave. When Sanji and Usopp attack him, he uses his devil fruit ability to electrocute them, rendering them both unconscious. Immediately afterwards, Satori's brothers Hotori and Kotori arrive to get revenge, but are defeated by Nami and Ganfall. During all of these events, the minor Shandia warriors and the divine soldiers battle fiercely. Meanwhile, Isa, the Shandia girl who can use mantra, uses a dial boat to go to Upper Yard, but the ship shuts down and she is picked up by Kanis and Pagaya. After Hotori and Kotori's defeat, Ganfall leaves the ship with Pierre in order to find out what Enel meant, leaving Nami his impact dial. Immediately afterwards, Kanis and Pagaya use a milky dial to form a shortcut to the exit and meet with Nami on the ship, giving Nami a new waiver. While they take care of Usopp and Sanji, Zoro unintentionally ends up with a South bird following him everywhere, because it thinks Zoro has food. In the snake's stomach, Luffy sees tons of gold and ruins, but cannot seem to find his way out, under the assumption that he's in a cave. Aboard, Enel decides to participate in his game and attacks the Shandia warrior Kamakiri. However, his electric attack unintentionally knocks out all of warriors fighting along the river. It's 2 hours into the survival game and there are only 25 participants left. Enel comments that it's more than he expected, so he decides to even it up a bit to make his prediction come true. During all of this, Robin reaches the City of Gold, which has been separated onto different layers of clouds, to find that there is no gold, but she instead finds out that a poneglyph is in the city specifically, on the Golden Bell. However, the bell is nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Chopper climbs a giant beanstalk he finds in search for the Gold City, only to end up in the domain of Priest Ohm, who badly wounds him. On the Going Merry, Isa tries to escape, but when Nami chases after her, the python appears and attacks them, because Luffy is hitting the lining of his stomach out of frustration. Using the waiver to escape, Nami and Isa end up even deeper in the jungle. At the same time, the South bird, while trying to steal Zoro's backpack, carries Zoro through the air but drops him when the snake tries to eat him. The Wiper reaches Ohm's area when Ganfall appears to explain that he has just been to God's shrine and it's completely destroyed with Enel nowhere in sight, meaning there is no point in going there. Zoro ends up landing here, and Ohm declares that not one of them will escape his ordeal of iron. As they all fight, Nami and Isa, along with a couple of soldiers, end up in the area too. Wiper attacks them, telling Isa to get out of the way, but Ganfall and Pierre save them, only to end up being eaten by the python. As Zoro fights, eventually defeating Ohm, the group in the python ends up meeting with Luffy. In the ruins of the Gold City Shandora, Robin encounters Enel, who explains that he took the gold from all the buildings but expresses interest when Robin mentions the gold bell. On the edge of the island where the Going Merry is, one of his soldiers warns them that Enel is planning on destroying the Sky Islands, and Enel attacks him, along with Pagaya, with his lightning attack, leaving Kanis to go warn everyone on Angel Island. Enel then destroys the clouds above him and Robin, sending Zoro, Wiper, and the snake falling to where he is. Ganfall and Nami manage to escape the snake, accidentally leaving behind Luffy, Isa, and Pierre, and after Enel electrocutes the python, he announces that with 3 minutes until time is up, there are 6 survivors left. One of them will have to go. When he asks the remaining survivors who it should be, they unanimously decide Enel. At this point, Enel explains why he wants to destroy Skypiea people living in the sky is unnatural, so as God it is his job to keep the natural order. After that, he wants to take people with him to the fairy Varth, a piece of Varth of infinite size, where it is only natural for God to reside as opposed to the limited upper yard. In response, Ganfall attacks him, only to be defeated, thus making God's prediction true, the 5 survivors being Enel, Wiper, Zoro, Robin, and Nami. When Robin says that he cannot simply destroy the land haphazardly, since he wants the gold bell, Enel replies that he already knows where it is and attacks her, since he hates manipulative women. Zoro fights back, but then Wiper uses Sea Stone to shut off Enel's devil fruit and uses his reject dial to kill him. However, with the Sea Stone off of him, Enel uses his ability to restart his heart and comes back to life. Enel defeats all of the fighters, leaving only Nami. With no hope to escape, Nami says that she will go with him, and she follows him, taking along her waiver so she can escape at the right time. However, this proves to be useless as Enel reveals his means of escape, the Arc Maxim, a flying ship using his powers as a source of energy, using the gold from the city as a conductor. Meanwhile, Luffy's group manages to escape from the Python and come across Enel's victims. After a barely conscious Robin explains the situation, Aiza explains that she can use her mantra to lead Luffy to him. At Angel Beach, Conus tries to convince everyone to leave to island, but she is labeled a heretic. To prove her point, she loudly yells that she does not consider Enel as God, and everyone runs away to escape God's judgment. However, when nothing happens to her, they realize that she is right after all. Enel will be destroying the entire land soon, so there's no point in specifically killing one person. They panic and run away, but the White Berets manage to bring order to the evacuation, so Conus hurries back to Upper Yard to show the Straw Hats the way out of Skypiea. Luffy finally reaches Enel, whom Enel fights. He is completely stunned, however, to find that his lightning attacks have no effect on Luffy, because he's a rubber man. Not only that, but Luffy can bypass his Logia ability and physically hurt him. After calming down, Enel switches to a different mode of attack by heating up staff, teleporting around, and using his mantra to predict Luffy's moves. During the fight, Enel had used the Arc Maxim to start a process he called Skypiea to form massive thunder clouds. By doing this, he can amplify his power enough to destroy the islands. They continue to fight and Luffy manages to get the upper hand until Enel attaches a large ball of gold to the rubberman's arm and knocks him off the ship back onto Upper Yard. As Nami prepares to fight against Enel, using her Climax thunderballs to deflect his weaker attacks, Sanji and Usopp finally wake up. When Sanji declares that he is going to rescue Nami, he forces Usopp to grapple them onto the ship. On the deck, Usopp distracts Enel while Nami prepares the waiver to jump off, aiming for the patch of island cloud around the beanstalk, getting a hit in the process. But as Enel prepares to kill them both, Sanji gets in the way of the attack, allowing them to escape. Immediately afterwards, the ship starts to blow up, revealing that Sanji was wrecking the machines allowing Arc Maxim to fly. As Enel leaves to fix the problem, Usopp, who had actually used one of his devices to stick onto the side of the ship, climbs back up and jumps off with Sanji. Enel manages to keep the ship flying with emergency dials and begins to shower the land with thunderbolts. Back in the ruins of Shandora, Luffy manages to recover, and along with Aiza and Pierre runs towards the beanstalk. After leaving the other two with Robin, who had carried everyone back up to the surface, Luffy runs up the beanstalk with the gold ball still attached to his arm. At this point, Wiper, Zoro, and Gan fall wake up, and Nami tells everyone to go to the Going Merry and uses her waiver to try to reach Luffy and get him to leave too. As Wiper reflects on a story told to him as a child, which shows what really happened when Mont Blanc Noland came to Jaya, Luffy continues up the beanstalk and is eventually met by Nami. Nami tries to convince him to leave, but he replies that he has to ring the bell so Mont Blanc Cricket and everyone else will know that the city of gold is in the sky. As Enel reaches the top, he unleashes his ultimate technique, Raigo. Using this, he destroys all of Angel Island, forming a gigantic hole in the clouds. When he reaches the Golden Bell, he creates another Raigo much larger than the first, meant to destroy all of Skypiea. Nami realizes that everyone is still near the beanstalk, so she sends down instructions to cut down the plant so that it will fall towards Enel. Despite Zoro's efforts, it remains standing, so upon hearing why Luffy wants to ring the bell, Wiper uses his reject dial to fell the beanstalk. Using the waiver's full power, Nami and Luffy blast up the falling plant and are sent flying towards Enel. However, Luffy pushes Nami onto a cloud and makes a detour into the Raigo. As all of the Skypieans and Shandia pray for the real god to act, Luffy swings the gold ball around to draw the electricity from the Raigo into him, and eventually breaks it apart. Despite Enel unleashing his full power, Luffy sends him crashing into the bell, sending a ring that could be heard everywhere. On the island of Jaya below, Cricket and the Saruyama Alliance hear the sound. At this point, Cricket explains the monsters at the beginning of the Jaya arc. It was theorized that these giants were actually shadows cast by people in the sky, and this is proven true by a giant shadow of Luffy in a victorious pose. Cricket breaks down crying, both because the city really existed and because he was glad that Luffy was all right. They then try to think of another dream to pursue. However, for the people of Skypiea, the ring means something else. The war between the Skypians and Shandia is over. As Enel and his ark, along with the bell, fall into the sea clouds below and the sky clears, everyone gathers on Upper Yard. The Shandia warriors begin to recover. Pagaya is revealed to be alive, and the ones who were forced to build the Ark Maxim were reunited with their families. At night, Wiper regains consciousness to find that he is being taken care of by Kanas, Gan Fall, and his tribe's chief. Wiper tries to convince his chief that they have to fight the Sky People to take control of Upper Yard, but he explains that war is the farthest thing from everyone's mind. Wiper runs outside to see everyone celebrating. Meanwhile, Enel has recovered and is back on his ark. However, he decides to let them keep their land as he heads towards the fairy Verth by himself, which, as it turns out, is actually the moon. The next day, they find out that the bell was caught in the fallen giant Jack, so the Shandia and the Sky People work together to pull it up, representing their unity. On the base of the belfry is a poneglyph, which Robin deciphers to be information on the location of the ancient weapon Poseidon. With this, the Shandia find out that they have no need to protect it anymore, so they no longer have to fight. To Robin's surprise, however, there is another message on the gold itself from Goldie. Roger. From reading it, she realizes that the Rio poneglyph is on Laughtail. In order to thank the Straw Hats, they offer one of the belfry's pillars, which Robin accepts. Meanwhile, Usopp managed to exchange several rubber bands, claiming that they were the same material that defeated Enel, for dials from the Skypians. Inside the still sleeping snake, the rest of the pirates steal several bags full of gold. When Robin appears with all of the people carrying the pillar, the Straw Hats think that they are attacking them for stealing the gold and that the pillar is a giant cannon, so they run away. Robin tells the Skypians that it looks like they do not want it, and she runs after them. The entire crew boards the Going Merry, and led by Kanas and Pagaya, they reach Cloud End where they can return to the Blue Sea. As Gan Fall is once again made god of Skypiea, the Straw Hat pirates fall to the Blue Sea, aided by an octopus balloon to slow their descent.